Climate change is indeed one of the biggest challenges our generation faces, and climate change is affecting us in more ways than we can imagine. It is affecting what we eat, where we live, how we vacation, and how young people are choosing their careers. In fact, India is the 7th most vulnerable country to climate change. But news about climate change and how it affects us can be difficult to find and confusing to wrap your head around. So we are starting a new show where we will bring to you 3 stories from the climate world every week. We will break down the stories in simple, jargon-free terms and tell you how they could impact your lives and why you should care about them. And while the news about climate change can often get very depressing, we do think that there are some positive shoots. So while we tell you stories that do alarm, should alarm, we will also bring you stories that give you hope. My name is Lavanya, and this is the Climate Brief. This week, we'll talk about the devastating California wildfires, how 2024 was officially the hottest year on record, and a new law in Thailand that bans the import of plastic waste. Wildfires in Hollywood. The wildfires in California, as you must have heard by now, have been devastating. The fires that started on the 7th of January have been blazing for more than 3 weeks. At least 28 fatalities have been reported, over 16,000 structures have been destroyed, and nearly 58,000 acres of land has gone up in flames. For context, this is nearly twice the area of the city of San Francisco. So why is this happening? The immediate factor that seems to have fueled the wildfires is a Santa Ana wind event. The Santa Ana winds are the strong, dry, and often warm winds that blow west from the deserts of Nevada and Utah to Southern California. The Santa Ana winds have the potential to create life-threatening fire weather conditions. They can lift embers from an existing fire into an unburned area where they may ignite a new fire, spread existing fires, and inhibit firefighting operations. But the main culprit is the unusual dryness. Dry conditions and fires in Southern California are not uncommon this time of year. However, this year it is unusually dry, the driest 8 months since 1900. And that is what is making these fires so much worse. Southern California is extremely dry right now, with huge portions of the region having seen less than a quarter inch of rain in the last 8 months. The landscape is parched and vegetation is withered, making the area dangerously susceptible to burning, an unusual situation for January. Southern California generally trends drier than in the north, but the region has usually received a shot or two of rain by the end of December and certainly by early January. Not this year. Still wondering if this was due to climate change? A rapid analysis released last week by World Weather Attribution, conducted by 32 researchers, including leading wildfire scientists from the US and Europe, has said the hot, dry, and windy conditions that drove the fires were about 35% more likely and 6% more intense due to 1.3 degrees Celsius of global warming. You know, I wish I could end this segment on a positive note, because there was some much needed rain in Southern California, which helped firefighters in containing the blaze. But these rains come with added threats. With no vegetation left, these rains cause mudslides in the scorched regions and increase the risk of toxic runoff. And the future only indicates that these incidents are going to get worse. With the dry period getting longer, it starts to overlap more and more with the Santa Ana winds, which fundamentally means the newspapers are right. Now moving on to some completely related news, 2024 is now officially the hottest year on record. Now, while everyone agrees, there is some disagreement over exactly how hot it was. According to the US's NOAA, the 2024 worldwide average temp was 1.46 degrees Celsius or 2.6 degrees Fahrenheit warmer than the pre-industrial era, whereas the EU's Copernicus Climate Change Service claims that the 2024 global temperature exceeded 1.5 degrees Celsius above the pre-industrial level. Regardless of who's accurate though, the real takeaway here is that 2024 was indeed the hottest year ever, with records going back to 1850, and the last 10 hottest years on record have all been in the last decade. A senior scientist at NASA said that the levels of global heating are pushing humanity beyond its historical experience of the Earth's climate. The extremely hot weather is resulting in more intense and frequent cyclones, more intense rainfall, related flooding, droughts, and wildfires, like the ones we saw in California in the previous story. Now, on to the third and final story for today. Thailand bans plastic waste imports. Thailand has enacted groundbreaking legislation banning plastic waste imports. When I heard of this, my first question was, why was Thailand importing plastic waste in the first place? Thailand is one of several Southeast Asian countries that has historically been paid to receive plastic waste from developed nations. The country became a leading destination for exports of plastic waste from Europe, the US, the UK, and Japan. In 2018, after China, the world's biggest market for household waste, imposed a ban. Thai customs officials said that more than 1.1 million tons of plastic scraps were imported between 2018 and 2021. However, the environmental and health costs have proved too high, with many processing facilities burning rather than recycling the waste. This decisive action highlights a growing resistance to developed nations' practice of exporting their waste management challenges and comes at a critical time when global plastic production is growing exponentially, but recycling rates remain stagnantly low at just 9%, despite exponential increases in plastic production. The reality of plastic recycling presents a stark contrast to public perception. While many consumers believe the familiar triangular symbol on plastic products indicates recyclability, this resin identification code merely identifies the type of plastic. Of the 7 types of plastic in common use, only 2, PET or water bottles and HDPE, detergent bottles, achieve meaningful recycling rates, with most other types having recycling rates below 3%. Even for commonly recycled items like the PET bottles, the success rate remains low, with only about 30% being recycled in most countries. Furthermore, most recycling is actually downcycling, where the resulting product is of a lower quality than the original material. Thailand's ban represents a crucial step in forcing developed nations to confront their waste management responsibilities directly. The practice of exporting plastic waste has increasingly been recognized as both an environmental and human health crisis, with mounting evidence linking microplastic exposure to increased risks of strokes and heart attacks. The legislative action signals a growing understanding that the solution to plastic pollution lies not in shifting the burden to developing nations, but in addressing waste reduction and management at its source. Here at the Climate Report, we believe addressing environmental challenges demands both honest conversations and direct action. Thailand's decisive step illuminates how confronting issues like plastic pollution requires moving beyond recycling myths to implement real systemic changes. And the first step towards climate action is to start having real conversations about climate change. So leave a like, click on that subscribe button, and I will catch you next week.